Paper 178. Last Day at the Camp. Jesus planned to spend this Thursday, his last free day on earth as a divine Son incarnated in the flesh, with his apostles and a few loyal and devoted disciples. Soon after the breakfast hour on this beautiful morning, the Master led them to a secluded spot a short distance above their camp, and there taught them many new truths. Although Jesus delivered other discourses to the apostles during the early evening hours of the day, this talk of Thursday forenoon was his farewell address to the combined camp group of apostles and chosen disciples, both Jews and Gentiles. The 12 were all present save Judas. Peter and several of the apostles remarked about his absence, and some of them thought Jesus had sent him into the city to attend to some matter, probably to arrange the details of their forthcoming celebration of the Passover. Judas did not return to the camp until mid-afternoon, a short time before Jesus led the 12 into Jerusalem to partake of the Last Supper. 1. Discourse on Sonship and Citizenship. Jesus talked to about 50 of his trusted followers for almost 2 hours and answered a score of questions regarding the relation of the kingdom of heaven to the kingdoms of this world, concerning the relation of sonship with God to citizenship in earthly governments. This discourse, together with his answers to questions, may be summarized and restated in modern language as follows. The kingdoms of this world, being material, may often find it necessary to employ physical force in the execution of their laws and for the maintenance of order. In the kingdom of heaven, true believers will not resort to the employment of physical force, the kingdom of heaven being a spiritual brotherhood of the Spirit-born sons of God, may be promulgated only by the power of the Spirit. This distinction of procedure refers to the relations of the kingdom of believers to the kingdoms of secular government, and does not nullify the right of social groups of believers to maintain order in their ranks and administer discipline upon unruly and unworthy members. There is nothing incompatible between sonship in the spiritual kingdom and citizenship in the secular or civil government. It is the believer's duty to render to Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and to God the things which are God's. There cannot be any disagreement between these two requirements, the one being material and the other spiritual, unless it should develop that a Caesar presumes to usurp the prerogatives of God and demand that spiritual homage and supreme worship be rendered to him. In such a case you shall worship only God, while you seek to enlighten such misguided earthly rulers, and in this way lead them also to the recognition of the Father in heaven. You shall not render spiritual worship to earthly rulers. Neither should you employ the physical forces of earthly governments, whose rulers may sometime become believers, in the work of furthering the mission of the spiritual kingdom. Sonship in the kingdom, from the standpoint of advancing civilization, should assist you in becoming the ideal citizens of the kingdoms of this world, since brotherhood and service are the cornerstones of the gospel of the kingdom. The love call of the spiritual kingdom should prove to be the effective destroyer of the hate urge of the unbelieving and war-minded citizens of the earthly kingdoms. But these material-minded sons in darkness will never know of your spiritual light of truth, unless you draw very near them with that unselfish social service which is the natural outgrowth of the bearing of the fruits of the Spirit in the life experience of each individual believer. As mortal and material men, you are indeed citizens of the earthly kingdoms, and you should be good citizens, all the better for having become reborn spirit sons of the heavenly kingdom. As faith-enlightened and spirit-liberated sons of the kingdom of heaven, you face a double responsibility of duty to man and duty to God, while you voluntarily assume a third and sacred obligation, service to the brotherhood of God-knowing believers. You may not worship your temporal rulers, and you should not employ temporal power in the furtherance of the spiritual kingdom. but you should manifest the righteous ministry of loving service to believers and unbelievers alike. In the gospel of the kingdom there resides the mighty Spirit of truth, and presently I will pour out this same Spirit upon all flesh. The fruits of the Spirit, your sincere and loving service, are the mighty social lever to uplift the races of darkness, and this Spirit of truth will become your power-multiplying fulcrum. Display wisdom and exhibit sagacity in your dealings with unbelieving civil rulers. By discretion, show yourselves to be expert in ironing out minor disagreements and in adjusting trifling misunderstandings. In every possible way, in everything short of your spiritual allegiance to the rulers of the universe, seek to live peaceably with all men. Be you always as wise as serpents, but as harmless as doves. You should be made all the better citizens of the secular government as a result of becoming enlightened sons of the kingdom. So should the rulers of earthly governments become all the better rulers in civil affairs as a result of believing this gospel of the heavenly kingdom. The attitude of unselfish service of man and intelligent worship of God should make all kingdom believers better world citizens, while the attitude of honest citizenship and sincere devotion to one's temporal duty should help to make such a citizen the more easily reached by the Spirit call to sonship in the heavenly kingdom. So long as the rulers of earthly government seek to exercise the authority of religious dictators, you who believe this gospel can expect only trouble, persecution, and even death. But the very light which you bear to the world, and even the very manner in which you will suffer and die for this gospel of the kingdom, will in themselves eventually enlighten the whole world and result in the gradual divorcement of politics and religion. The persistent preaching of this gospel of the kingdom will someday bring to all nations a new and unbelievable liberation, intellectual freedom, and religious liberty. Under the soon coming persecutions by those who hate this gospel of joy and liberty, you will thrive, and the kingdom will prosper. But you will stand in grave danger in subsequent times when most men will speak well of kingdom believers, and many in high places nominally accept the gospel of the heavenly kingdom. Learn to be faithful to the kingdom even in times of peace and prosperity. Tempt not the angels of your supervision to lead you in troublous ways as a loving discipline designed to save your ease-drifting souls. Remember that you are commissioned to preach this gospel of the kingdom, the supreme desire to do the Father's will, coupled with the supreme joy of the faith realization of sonship with God, and you must not allow anything to divert your devotion to this one duty. Let all mankind benefit from the overflow of your loving spiritual ministry, enlightening intellectual communion, and uplifting social service. But none of these humanitarian labors, nor all of them, should be permitted to take the place of proclaiming the gospel. These mighty ministrations are social byproducts of the still more mighty and sublime ministrations and transformations wrought in the heart of the kingdom believer by the living Spirit of truth and by the personal realization that the faith of a Spirit-born man confers the assurance of living fellowship with the eternal God. You must not seek to promulgate truth, nor to establish righteousness by the power of civil governments or by the inaction of secular laws. You may always labor to persuade men's minds, but you must never dare to compel them. You must not forget the great law of human fairness, which I have taught you in positive form. Whatsoever you would that men should do to you, do even so to them. When a kingdom believer is called upon to serve the civil government, let him render such service as a temporal citizen of such a government, albeit such a believer should display in his civil service all of the ordinary traits of citizenship as these have been enhanced by the spiritual enlightenment of the ennobling association of the mind of mortal man with the indwelling Spirit of the eternal God. If the unbeliever can qualify as a superior civil servant, you should seriously question whether the roots of truth in your heart have not died from the lack of the living waters of combined spiritual communion and social service. The consciousness of sonship with God should quicken the entire life service of every man, woman, and child who has become the possessor of such a mighty stimulus to all the inherent powers of a human personality. You are not to be passive mystics or colorless ascetics. You should not become dreamers and drifters, supinely trusting in a fictitious providence to provide even the necessities of life. You are indeed to be gentle in your dealings with erring mortals, patient in your intercourse with ignorant men, and forbearing under provocation. But you are also to be valiant in defense of righteousness, mighty in the promulgation of truth, and aggressive in the preaching of this gospel of the kingdom, even to the ends of the earth. This gospel of the kingdom is a living truth. I have told you it is like the leaven in the dough, like the grain of mustard seed. And now I declare that it is like the seed of the living being, which from generation to generation, while it remains the same living seed, unfailingly unfolds itself in new manifestations, and grows acceptably in channels of new adaptation to the peculiar needs and conditions of each successive generation. The revelation I have made to you is a living revelation, and I desire that it shall bear appropriate fruits in each individual and in each generation, in accordance with the laws of spiritual growth, increase, and adaptative development. From generation to generation, this gospel must show increasing vitality and exhibit greater depth of spiritual power. It must not be permitted to become merely a sacred memory, a mere tradition about me and the times in which we now live. And forget not, we have made no direct attack upon the persons or upon the authority of those who sit in Moses' seat. We only offered them the new light, which they have so vigorously rejected. We have assailed them only by the denunciation of their spiritual disloyalty to the very truths which they profess to teach and safeguard. We clashed with these established leaders and recognized rulers only when they threw themselves directly in the way of the preaching of the gospel of the kingdom to the sons of men. And even now it is not we who assail them, but they who seek our destruction. Do not forget that you are commissioned to go forth preaching only the good news. You are not to attack the old ways. You are skillfully to put the leaven of new truth in the midst of the old beliefs. Let the Spirit of truth do His own work. Let controversy come only when they who despise the truth force it upon you. But when the willful unbeliever attacks you, do not hesitate to stand in vigorous defense of the truth, which has saved and sanctified you. Throughout the vicissitudes of life, remember always to love one another. Do not strive with men, even with unbelievers. Show mercy even to those who despitefully abuse you. Show yourselves to be loyal citizens, upright artisans, praiseworthy neighbors, devoted kinsmen, understanding parents, and sincere believers in the brotherhood of the Father's kingdom. And my Spirit shall be upon you, now and even to the end of the world. When Jesus had concluded his teaching, it was almost 1 o'clock, and they immediately went back to the camp where David and his associates had lunch ready for them. 2. After the noontime meal. Not many of the Master's hearers were able to take in even a part of his forenoon address. Of all who heard him, the Greeks comprehended most. Even the 11 apostles were bewildered by his allusions to future political kingdoms and to successive generations of kingdom believers. Jesus' most devoted followers could not reconcile the impending end of his earthly ministry with these references to an extended future of gospel activities. Some of these Jewish believers were beginning to sense that earth's greatest tragedy was about to take place, but they could not reconcile such an impending disaster with either the Master's cheerfully indifferent personal attitude or his forenoon discourse, wherein he repeatedly alluded to the future transactions of the heavenly kingdom, extending over vast stretches of time and embracing relations with many and successive temporal kingdoms on earth. By noon of this day all the apostles and disciples had learned about the hasty flight of Lazarus from Bethany. they began to sense the grim determination of the Jewish rulers to exterminate Jesus and his teachings. David Zebedee, through the work of his secret agents in Jerusalem, was fully advised concerning the progress of the plan to arrest and kill Jesus. He knew all about the part of Judas in this plot, but he never disclosed this knowledge to the other apostles, nor to any of the disciples. Shortly after lunch, he did lead Jesus aside, and, making bold, asked him whether he knew. But he never got further with his question. The Master, holding up his hand, stopped him, saying, "Yes, David, I know all about it, and I know that you know. But see to it that you tell no man. Only doubt not in your own heart that the will of God will prevail in the end." This conversation with David was interrupted by the arrival of a messenger from Philadelphia, bringing word that Abner had heard of the plot to kill Jesus, and asking if he should depart for Jerusalem. This runner hastened off for Philadelphia with this word for Abner: "Go on with your work. If I depart from you in the flesh, it is only that I may return in the Spirit. I will not forsake you. I will be with you to the end." About this time Philip came to the Master and asked, "Master, seeing that the time of the Passover draws near, where would you have us prepare to eat it?" And when Jesus heard Philip's question, he answered, "Go and bring Peter and John, and I will give you directions concerning the supper we will eat together this night. As for the Passover, that you will have to consider after we have first done this." When Judas heard the Master speaking with Philip about these matters, he drew closer that he might overhear their conversation. But David Zebedee, who was standing near, stepped up and engaged Judas in conversation, while Philip, Peter, and John went to one side to talk with the Master. Said Jesus to the three, "Go immediately into Jerusalem, and as you enter the gate you will meet a man bearing a water pitcher. He will speak to you, and then shall you follow him. When he leads you to a certain house, go in after him and ask of the good man of that house, 'Where is the guest chamber wherein the Master is to eat supper with his apostles?' And when you have thus inquired, this householder will show you a large upper room, all furnished and ready for us." When the apostles reached the city, they met the man with the water pitcher near the gate, and followed on after him to the home of John Mark, where the lad's father met them and showed them the upper room in readiness for the evening meal. And all of this came to pass as the result of an understanding arrived at between the Master and John Mark during the afternoon of the preceding day, when they were alone in the hills. Jesus wanted to be sure he would have this one last meal undisturbed with his apostles, and believing if Judas knew beforehand of their place of meeting, he might arrange with his enemies to take him, he made this secret arrangement with John Mark. In this way Judas did not learn of their place of meeting until later on, when he arrived there in company with Jesus and the other apostles. David Zebedee had much business to transact with Judas, so that he was easily prevented from following Peter, John, and Philip, as he so much desired to do. When Judas gave David a certain sum of money for provisions, David said to him, "Judas, might it not be well under the circumstances to provide me with a little money in advance of my actual needs?" And after Judas had reflected for a moment, he answered, "Yes, David, I think it would be wise. In fact, in view of the disturbed conditions in Jerusalem, I think it would be best for me to turn over all the money to you. They plot against the Master, and in case anything should happen to me, you would not be hampered." And so David received all the apostolic cash funds and receipts for all money on deposit. Not until the evening of the next day did the apostles learn of this transaction. It was about 4:30 when the three apostles returned and informed Jesus that everything was in readiness for the supper. The Master immediately prepared to lead his 12 apostles over the trail to the Bethany road and on into Jerusalem. And this was the last journey he ever made with all 12 of them. 3. On the way to the supper. Seeking again to avoid the crowds passing through the Kidron Valley back and forth between Gethsemane Park and Jerusalem, Jesus and the 12 walked over the western brow of Mount Olivet to meet the road leading from Bethany down to the city. As they drew near the place where Jesus had tarried the previous evening to discourse on the destruction of Jerusalem, they unconsciously paused while they stood and looked down in silence upon the city. As they were a little early, and since Jesus did not wish to pass through the city until after sunset, he said to his associates, "Sit down and rest yourselves while I talk with you about what must shortly come to pass. All these years have I lived with you as brethren, and I have taught you the truth concerning the kingdom of heaven, and have revealed to you the mysteries thereof. And my Father has indeed done many wonderful works in connection with my mission on earth. You have been witnesses of all this, and partakers in the experience of being laborers together with God. And you will bear me witness that I have for some time warned you that I must presently return to the work the Father has given me to do. I have plainly told you that I must leave you in the world to carry on the work of the kingdom. It was for this purpose that I set you apart in the hills of Capernaum. The experience you have had with me, you must now make ready to share with others. As the Father sent me into this world, so am I about to send you forth to represent me and finish the work I have begun. You look down on yonder city in sorrow, for you have heard my words telling of the end of Jerusalem. I have forewarned you lest you should perish in her destruction, and so delay the proclamation of the gospel of the kingdom. Likewise do I warn you to take heed lest you needlessly expose yourselves to peril when they come to take the Son of Man. I must go, but you are to remain to witness to this gospel when I have gone, even as I directed that Lazarus flee from the wrath of man, that he might live to make known the glory of God. If it is the Father's will that I depart, nothing you may do can frustrate the divine plan. Take heed to yourselves, lest they kill you also. Let your souls be valiant in defense of the gospel by spirit power, but be not misled into any foolish attempt to defend the Son of Man. I need no defense by the hand of man. The armies of heaven are even now near at hand, but I am determined to do the will of my Father in heaven, and therefore must we submit to that which is so soon to come upon us. When you see this city destroyed, forget not that you have entered already upon the eternal life of endless service in the ever-advancing kingdom of heaven, even of the heaven of heavens. You should know that in my Father's universe and in mine are many abodes, and that there awaits the children of light the revelation of cities whose builder is God, and worlds whose habit of life is righteousness and joy in the truth. I have brought the kingdom of heaven to you here on earth, but I declare that all of you, who by faith enter therein and remain therein by the living service of truth, shall surely ascend to the worlds on high and sit with me in the spirit kingdom of our Father. But first must you gird yourselves and complete the work which you have begun with me. You must first pass through much tribulation and endure many sorrows, and these trials are even now upon us. And when you have finished your work on earth, you shall come to my joy, even as I have finished my Father's work on earth, and am about to return to his embrace." When the Master had spoken, he arose, and they all followed him down Olivet and into the city. None of the apostles, save 3, knew where they were going as they made their way along the narrow streets in the approaching darkness. The crowds jostled them, but no one recognized them, nor knew that the Son of God was passing by, on his way to the last mortal rendezvous with his chosen ambassadors of the kingdom. And neither did the apostles know that one of their own number had already entered into a conspiracy to betray the Master into the hands of his enemies. John Mark had followed them all the way into the city, and after they had entered the gate, he hurried on by another street, so that he was waiting to welcome them to his Father's home when they arrived.
Paper 179. The Last Supper. During the afternoon of this Thursday, when Philip reminded the Master about the approaching Passover, and inquired concerning his plans for its celebration, he had in mind the Passover supper which was due to be eaten on the evening of the next day, Friday. It was the custom to begin the preparations for the celebration of the Passover not later than noon of the preceding day. And since the Jews reckoned the day as beginning at sunset, this meant that Saturday's Passover supper would be eaten on Friday night, sometime before the midnight hour. The apostles were therefore entirely at a loss to understand the Master's announcement that they would celebrate the Passover one day early. They thought, at least some of them did, that he knew he would be placed under arrest before the time of the Passover supper on Friday night, and was therefore calling them together for a special supper on this Thursday evening. Others thought that this was merely a special occasion, which was to precede the regular Passover celebration. The apostles knew that Jesus had celebrated other Passovers without the lamb. They knew that he did not personally participate in any sacrificial service of the Jewish system. He had many times partaken of the paschal lamb as a guest, but always when he was the host, no lamb was served. It would not have been a great surprise to the apostles to have seen the lamb omitted even on Passover night, and since this supper was given one day earlier, they thought nothing of its absence. After receiving the greetings of welcome extended by the father and mother of John Mark, the apostles went immediately to the upper chamber, while Jesus lingered behind to talk with the Mark family. It had been understood beforehand that the Master was to celebrate this occasion alone with his 12 apostles. Therefore, no servants were provided to wait upon them. 1. The desire for preference. When the apostles had been shown upstairs by John Mark, they beheld a large and commodious chamber which was completely furnished for the supper, and observed that the bread, wine, water, and herbs were all in readiness on one end of the table. Except for the end on which rested the bread and wine, this long table was surrounded by 13 reclining couches, just such as would be provided for the celebration of the Passover in a well-to-do Jewish household. As the 12 entered this upper chamber, they noticed just inside the door the pitchers of water, the basins, and towels for laving their dusty feet. And since no servant had been provided to render this service, the apostles began to look at one another as soon as John Mark had left them, and each began to think within himself, "Who shall wash our feet?" And each likewise thought that it would not be he who would thus seem to act as the servant of the others. As they stood there debating in their hearts, they surveyed the seating arrangement of the table, taking note of the higher divan of the host, with one couch on the right, and 11 arranged around the table on up to opposite this second seat of honor on the host's right. They expected the Master to arrive any moment, but they were in a quandary as to whether they should seat themselves or await his coming and depend on him to assign them their places. While they hesitated, Judas stepped over to the seat of honor at the left of the host and signified that he intended there to recline as the preferred guest. This act of Judas immediately stirred up a heated dispute among the other apostles. Judas had no sooner seized the seat of honor than John Zebedee laid claim to the next preferred seat, the one on the right of the host. Simon Peter was so enraged at this assumption of choice positions by Judas and John that as the other angry apostles looked on, he marched clear around the table and took his place on the lowest couch, the end of the seating order and just opposite to that chosen by John Zebedee. Since others had seized the high seats, Peter thought to choose the lowest, and he did this not merely in protest against the unseemly pride of his brethren, but with the hope that Jesus, when he should come and see him in the place of least honor, would call him up to a higher one, thus displacing one who had presumed to honor himself. With the highest and the lowest positions thus occupied, the rest of the apostles chose places, some near Judas and some near Peter, until all were located. They were seated about the U-shaped table on these reclining divans in the following order: on the right of the Master, John; on the left, Judas; Simon Zelotes, Matthew, James Zebedee, Andrew, the Alphaeus twins, Philip, Nathanael, Thomas, and Simon Peter. They are gathered together to celebrate, at least in spirit, an institution which antedated even Moses, and referred to the times when their fathers were slaves in Egypt. This supper is their last rendezvous with Jesus. And even in such a solemn setting, under the leadership of Judas, the apostles are led once more to give way to their old predilection for honor, preference, and personal exaltation. They were still engaged in voicing angry recriminations when the Master appeared in the doorway, where he hesitated a moment as a look of disappointment slowly crept over his face. Without comment, he went to his place, and he did not disturb their seating arrangement. They were now ready to begin the supper, except that their feet were still unwashed, and they were in anything but a pleasant frame of mind. When the Master arrived, they were still engaged in making uncomplimentary remarks about one another, to say nothing of the thoughts of some who had sufficient emotional control to refrain from publicly expressing their feelings. 2. Beginning the supper. For a few moments after the Master had gone to his place, not a word was spoken. Jesus looked them all over, and relieving the tension with a smile, said, "I have greatly desired to eat this Passover with you. I wanted to eat with you once more before I suffered. And realizing that my hour has come, I arranged to have this supper with you tonight, for as concerns the morrow, we are all in the hands of the Father, whose will I have come to execute. I shall not again eat with you until you sit down with me in the kingdom which my Father will give me when I have finished that for which he sent me into this world." After the wine and the water had been mixed, they brought the cup to Jesus, who, when he had received it from the hand of Thaddeus, held it while he offered thanks. And when he had finished offering thanks, he said, "Take this cup, and divide it among yourselves. And when you partake of it, realize that I shall not again drink with you the fruit of the vine, since this is our last supper. When we sit down again in this manner, it will be in the kingdom to come." Jesus began thus to talk to his apostles because he knew that his hour had come. He understood that the time had come when he was to return to the Father, and that his work on earth was almost finished. The Master knew he had revealed the Father's love on earth, and had shown forth his mercy to mankind, and that he had completed that for which he came into the world, even to the receiving of all power and authority in heaven and on earth. Likewise, he knew Judas Iscariot had fully made up his mind to deliver him that night into the hands of his enemies. He fully realized that this traitorous betrayal was the work of Judas, but that it also pleased Lucifer, Satan, and Caligastia, the prince of darkness. But he feared none of those who sought his spiritual overthrow any more than he feared those who sought to accomplish his physical death. The Master had but one anxiety, and that was for the safety and salvation of his chosen followers. And so, with the full knowledge that the Father had put all things under his authority, the Master now prepared to enact the parable of brotherly love. 3. Washing the apostles' feet. After drinking the first cup of the Passover, it was the Jewish custom for the host to arise from the table and wash his hands. Later on in the meal and after the second cup, all of the guests likewise rose up and washed their hands. Since the apostles knew that their Master never observed these rites of ceremonial hand-washing, they were very curious to know what he intended to do when, after they had partaken of this first cup, he arose from the table and silently made his way over to near the door where the water pitchers, basins, and towels had been placed. And their curiosity grew into astonishment as they saw the Master remove his outer garment, gird himself with a towel, and begin to pour water into one of the foot basins. Imagine the amazement of these 12 men who had so recently refused to wash one another's feet, and who had engaged in such unseemly disputes about positions of honor at the table, when they saw him make his way around the unoccupied end of the table to the lowest seat of the feast, where Simon Peter reclined, and kneeling down in the attitude of a servant, make ready to wash Simon's feet. As the Master knelt, all 12 arose as one man to their feet. Even the traitorous Judas so far forgot his infamy for a moment as to arise with his fellow apostles in this expression of surprise, respect, and utter amazement. There stood Simon Peter, looking down into the upturned face of his Master. Jesus said nothing. It was not necessary that he should speak. His attitude plainly revealed that he was minded to wash Simon Peter's feet. Notwithstanding his frailties of the flesh, Peter loved the Master. This Galilean fisherman was the first human being wholeheartedly to believe in the divinity of Jesus and to make full and public confession of that belief. And Peter had never since really doubted the divine nature of the Master. Since Peter so revered and honored Jesus in his heart, it was not strange that his soul resented the thought of Jesus kneeling there before him in the attitude of a menial servant and proposing to wash his feet as would a slave. When Peter presently collected his wits sufficiently to address the Master, he spoke the heart feelings of all his fellow apostles. After a few moments of this great embarrassment, Peter said, "Master, do you really mean to wash my feet?" And then, looking up into Peter's face, Jesus said, "You may not fully understand what I am about to do, but hereafter you will know the meaning of all these things." Then Simon Peter, drawing a long breath, said, "Master, you shall never wash my feet." And each of the apostles nodded their approval of Peter's firm declaration of refusal to allow Jesus thus to humble himself before them. The dramatic appeal of this unusual scene at first touched the heart of even Judas Iscariot, but when his vainglorious intellect passed judgment upon the spectacle, he concluded that this gesture of humility was just one more episode which conclusively proved that Jesus would never qualify as Israel's deliverer, and that he had made no mistake in the decision to desert the Master's cause. As they all stood there in breathless amazement, Jesus said, "Peter, I declare that if I do not wash your feet, you will have no part with me in that which I am about to perform." When Peter heard this declaration, coupled with the fact that Jesus continued kneeling there at his feet, he made one of those decisions of blind acquiescence, in compliance with the wish of one whom he respected and loved. As it began to dawn on Simon Peter that there was attached to this proposed enactment of service some signification that determined one's future connection with the Master's work, he not only became reconciled to the thought of allowing Jesus to wash his feet, but in his characteristic and impetuous manner said, "Then, Master, wash not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." As the Master made ready to begin washing Peter's feet, he said, "He who is already clean needs only to have his feet washed. You who sit with me tonight are clean, but not all. But the dust of your feet should have been washed away before you sat down at meat with me. And besides, I would perform this service for you as a parable to illustrate the meaning of a new commandment which I will presently give you." In like manner the Master went around the table in silence, washing the feet of his 12 apostles, not even passing by Judas. When Jesus had finished washing the feet of the 12, he donned his cloak, returned to his place as host, and after looking over his bewildered apostles said, "Do you really understand what I have done to you? You call me Master, and you say well, for so I am. If then the Master has washed your feet, why was it that you were unwilling to wash one another's feet?" What lesson should you learn from this parable in which the Master so willingly does that service which his brethren were unwilling to do for one another? Verily, verily, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, neither is one who is sent greater than he who sends him. You have seen the way of service in my life among you, and blessed are you who will have the gracious courage so to serve. But why are you so slow to learn that the secret of greatness in the spiritual kingdom is not like the methods of power in the material world? When I came into this chamber tonight, you were not content proudly to refuse to wash one another's feet, but you must also fall to disputing among yourselves as to who should have the places of honor at my table. Such honors the Pharisees and the children of this world seek, but it should not be so among the ambassadors of the heavenly kingdom. Do you not know that there can be no place of preferment at my table? Do you not understand that I love each of you as I do the others? Do you not know that the place nearest me, as men regard such honors, can mean nothing concerning your standing in the kingdom of heaven? You know that the kings of the Gentiles have lordship over their subjects, while those who exercise this authority are sometimes called benefactors. But it shall not be so in the kingdom of heaven. He who would be great among you, let him become as the younger, while he who would be chief, let him become as one who serves. Who is the greater, he who sits at meat, or he who serves? Is it not commonly regarded that he who sits at meat is the greater? But you will observe that I am among you as one who serves. If you are willing to become fellow servants with me in doing the Father's will, in the kingdom to come you shall sit with me in power, still doing the Father's will in future glory. When Jesus had finished speaking, the Alphaeus twins brought on the bread and wine, with the bitter herbs and the paste of dried fruits, for the next course of the Last Supper. 4. Last words to the betrayer. For some minutes the apostles ate in silence, but under the influence of the Master's cheerful demeanor, they were soon drawn into conversation, and ere long the meal was proceeding as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred to interfere with the good cheer and social accord of this extraordinary occasion. After some time had elapsed, in about the middle of this second course of the meal, Jesus, looking them over, said, I have told you how much I desired to have this supper with you, and knowing how the evil forces of darkness have conspired to bring about the death of the Son of Man, I determined to eat this supper with you in this secret chamber, and a day in advance of the Passover, since I will not be with you by this time tomorrow night. I have repeatedly told you that I must return to the Father. Now has my hour come, but it was not required that one of you should betray me into the hands of my enemies. When the 12 heard this, having already been robbed of much of their self-assertiveness and self-confidence by the parable of the feet-washing and the Master's subsequent discourse, they began to look at one another, while in disconcerted tones they hesitatingly inquired, Is it I? And when they had all so inquired, Jesus said, While it is necessary that I go to the Father, it was not required that one of you should become a traitor to fulfill the Father's will. This is the coming to fruit of the concealed evil in the heart of one who failed to love the truth with his whole soul. How deceitful is the intellectual pride that precedes the spiritual downfall. My friend of many years, who even now eats my bread, will be willing to betray me even as he now dips his hand with me in the dish. And when Jesus had thus spoken, they all began again to ask, Is it I? And as Judas, sitting on the left of his master, again asked, Is it I? Jesus, dipping the bread in the dish of herbs, handed it to Judas, saying, You have said. But the others did not hear Jesus speak to Judas. John, who reclined on Jesus' right hand, leaned over and asked the Master, Who is it? We should know who it is that has proved untrue to his trust. Jesus answered, Already have I told you, even he to whom I gave the sop. But it was so natural for the host to give a sop to the one who sat next to him on the left, that none of them took notice of this, even though the Master had so plainly spoken. But Judas was painfully conscious of the meaning of the Master's words associated with his act, and he became fearful lest his brethren were likewise now aware that he was the betrayer. Peter was highly excited by what had been said, and leaning forward over the table he addressed John, Ask him who it is, or if he has told you, tell me who is the betrayer. Jesus brought their whisperings to an end by saying, I sorrow that this evil should have come to pass, and hoped even up to this hour that the power of truth might triumph over the deceptions of evil. But such victories are not won without the faith of the sincere love of truth. I would not have told you these things at this, our Last Supper, but I desire to warn you of these sorrows and so prepare you for what is now upon us. I have told you of this, because I desire that you should recall after I have gone that I knew about all these evil plottings, and that I forewarned you of my betrayal. And I do all this only that you may be strengthened for the temptations and trials which are just ahead. When Jesus had thus spoken, leaning over toward Judas, he said, What you have decided to do, do quickly. And when Judas heard these words, he arose from the table and hastily left the room, going out into the night to do what he had set his mind to accomplish. When the other apostles saw Judas hasten off after Jesus had spoken to him, they thought he had gone to procure something additional for the supper, or to do some other errand for the master, since they supposed he still carried the bag. Jesus now knew that nothing could be done to keep Judas from turning traitor. He started with 12, now he had 11. He chose 6 of these apostles, and though Judas was among those nominated by his first chosen apostles, still the Master accepted him, and had up to this very hour done everything possible to sanctify and save him, even as he had wrought for the peace and salvation of the others. This supper, with its tender episodes and softening touches, was Jesus' last appeal to the deserting Judas, but it was of no avail. Warning, even when administered in the most tactful manner and conveyed in the most kindly spirit, as a rule only intensifies hatred and fires the evil determination to carry out to the full one's own selfish projects when love is once really dead. 5. Establishing the Remembrance Supper. As they brought Jesus the 3rd cup of wine, the cup of blessing, he arose from the couch, and taking the cup in his hands blessed it, saying, "Take this cup, all of you, and drink of it. This shall be the cup of my remembrance. This is the cup of the blessing of a new dispensation of grace and truth. This shall be to you the emblem of the bestowal and ministry of the divine Spirit of truth. And I will not again drink this cup with you until I drink in new form with you in the Father's eternal kingdom." The apostles all sensed that something out of the ordinary was transpiring as they drank of this cup of blessing in profound reverence and perfect silence. The old Passover commemorated the emergence of their fathers from a state of racial slavery into individual freedom. Now the Master was instituting a new remembrance supper as a symbol of the new dispensation wherein the enslaved individual emerges from the bondage of ceremonialism and selfishness into the spiritual joy of the brotherhood and fellowship of the liberated faith sons of the living God. When they had finished drinking this new cup of remembrance, the Master took up the bread, and after giving thanks broke it in pieces, and directing them to pass it around, said, "Take this bread of remembrance and eat it. I have told you that I am the bread of life. And this bread of life is the united life of the Father and the Son in one gift. The Word of the Father, as revealed in the Son, is indeed the bread of life." When they had partaken of the bread of remembrance, the symbol of the living Word of truth, incarnated in the likeness of mortal flesh, they all sat down. In instituting this remembrance supper, the Master, as was always his habit, resorted to parables and symbols. He employed symbols because he wanted to teach certain great spiritual truths in such a manner as to make it difficult for his successors to attach precise interpretations and definite meanings to his words. In this way he sought to prevent successive generations from crystallizing his teaching and binding down his spiritual meanings by the dead chains of tradition and dogma. In the establishment of the only ceremony or sacrament associated with his whole life mission, Jesus took great pains to suggest his meanings, rather than to commit himself to precise definitions. He did not wish to destroy the individual's concept of divine communion by establishing a precise form. Neither did he desire to limit the believer's spiritual imagination by formally cramping it. He rather sought to set man's reborn soul free upon the joyous wings of a new and living spiritual liberty. Notwithstanding the Master's effort thus to establish this new sacrament of the remembrance, those who followed after him in the intervening centuries saw to it that his expressed desire was effectively thwarted, in that his simple spiritual symbolism of that last night in the flesh has been reduced to precise interpretations and subjected to the almost mathematical precision of a set formula. Of all Jesus' teachings, none have become more tradition standardized. This supper of remembrance, when it is partaken of by those who are Son-believing and God-knowing, does not need to have associated with its symbolism any of man's puerile misinterpretations regarding the meaning of the divine presence. For upon all such occasions, the Master is really present. The Remembrance Supper is the believer's symbolic rendezvous with Michael. When you become thus spirit-conscious, the Son is actually present, and His Spirit fraternizes with the indwelling fragment of His Father. After they had engaged in meditation for a few moments, Jesus continued speaking. When you do these things, recall the life I have lived on earth among you, and rejoice that I am to continue to live on earth with you and to serve through you. As individuals, contend not among yourselves as to who shall be greatest. Be you all as brethren. And when the kingdom grows to embrace large groups of believers, likewise should you refrain from contending for greatness, or seeking preferment between such groups. And this mighty occasion took place in the upper chamber of a friend. There was nothing of sacred form or of ceremonial consecration about either the supper or the building. The Remembrance Supper was established without ecclesiastical sanction. When Jesus had thus established the supper of the remembrance, He said to the apostles, And as often as you do this, do it in remembrance of me. And when you do remember me, first look back upon my life in the flesh. Recall that I was once with you, and then by faith discern that you shall all sometime sup with me in the Father's eternal kingdom. This is the new Passover which I leave with you, even the memory of my bestowal life, the word of eternal truth, and of my love for you, the outpouring of my Spirit of truth upon all flesh. And they ended this celebration of the old but bloodless Passover in connection with the inauguration of the new supper of the remembrance by singing all together the 118th Psalm.
Paper 180. The Farewell Discourse. After singing the psalm at the conclusion of the Last Supper, the apostles thought that Jesus intended to return immediately to the camp, but He indicated that they should sit down. Said the Master, You well remember when I sent you forth without purse or wallet, and even advised that you take with you no extra clothes. And you will all recall that you lacked nothing. But now have you come upon troublous times. No longer can you depend upon the goodwill of the multitudes. Henceforth, he who has a purse, let him take it with him. When you go out into the world to proclaim this gospel, make such provision for your support as seems best. I have come to bring peace, but it will not appear for a time. The time has now come for the Son of Man to be glorified, and the Father shall be glorified in me. My friends, I am to be with you only a little longer. Soon you will seek for me, but you will not find me, for I am going to a place to which you cannot, at this time, come. But when you have finished your work on earth as I have now finished mine, you shall then come to me, even as I now prepare to go to my Father. In just a short time I am going to leave you. You will see me no more on earth, but you shall all see me in the age to come, when you ascend to the kingdom which my Father has given to me. 1. The New Commandment. After a few moments of informal conversation, Jesus stood up and said, When I enacted for you a parable indicating how you should be willing to serve one another, I said that I desired to give you a new commandment. And I would do this now as I am about to leave you. You well know the commandment which directs that you love one another, that you love your neighbor even as yourself. But I am not wholly satisfied with even that sincere devotion on the part of my children. I would have you perform still greater acts of love in the kingdom of the believing brotherhood. And so I give you this new commandment, that you love one another even as I have loved you. And by this will all men know that you are my disciples if you thus love one another. When I give you this new commandment, I do not place any new burden upon your souls. Rather do I bring you new joy and make it possible for you to experience new pleasure in knowing the delights of the bestowal of your heart's affection upon your fellow men. I am about to experience the supreme joy, even though enduring outward sorrow, in the bestowal of my affection upon you and your fellow mortals. When I invite you to love one another, even as I have loved you, I hold up before you the supreme measure of true affection, For greater love can no man have than this, that he will lay down his life for his friends. And you are my friends. You will continue to be my friends if you are but willing to do what I have taught you. You have called me master, but I do not call you servants. If you will only love one another as I am loving you, you shall be my friends, and I will ever speak to you of that which the Father reveals to me. You have not merely chosen me, but I have also chosen you, and I have ordained you to go forth into the world to yield the fruit of loving service to your fellows, even as I have lived among you and revealed the Father to you. The Father and I will both work with you, and you shall experience the divine fullness of joy if you will only obey my command to love one another, even as I have loved you. If you would share the Master's joy, you must share his love. And to share his love means that you have shared his service. Such an experience of love does not deliver you from the difficulties of this world. It does not create a new world, but it most certainly does make the old world new. Keep in mind, it is loyalty, not sacrifice, that Jesus demands. The consciousness of sacrifice implies the absence of that wholehearted affection which would have made such a loving service a supreme joy. The idea of duty signifies that you are servant-minded and hence are missing the mighty thrill of doing your service as a friend and for a friend. The impulse of friendship transcends all convictions of duty, and the service of a friend for a friend can never be called a sacrifice. The Master has taught the apostles that they are the sons of God. He has called them brethren, and now, before he leaves, he calls them his friends. 2. The vine and the branches. Then Jesus stood up again and continued teaching his apostles. I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. I am the vine, and you are the branches. And the Father requires of me only that you shall bear much fruit. The vine is pruned only to increase the fruitfulness of its branches. Every branch coming out of me which bears no fruit, the Father will take away. Every branch which bears fruit, the Father will cleanse that it may bear more fruit. Already are you clean through the word I have spoken, but you must continue to be clean. You must abide in me, and I in you. The branch will die if it is separated from the vine. As the branch cannot bear fruit except it abides in the vine, so neither can you yield the fruits of loving service except you abide in me. Remember, I am the real vine, and you are the living branches. He who lives in me, and I in him, will bear much fruit of the Spirit and experience the supreme joy of yielding this spiritual harvest. If you will maintain this living spiritual connection with me, you will bear abundant fruit. If you abide in me and my words live in you, you will be able to commune freely with me, and then can my living Spirit so infuse you that you may ask whatsoever my Spirit wills, and do all this with the assurance that the Father will grant us our petition. Herein is the Father glorified, that the vine has many living branches, and that every branch bears much fruit. And when the world sees these fruit-bearing branches, my friends who love one another, even as I have loved them, all men will know that you are truly my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Live in my love, even as I live in the Father's love. If you do as I have taught you, you shall abide in my love, even as I have kept the Father's word, and evermore abide in his love. The Jews had long taught that the Messiah would be a stem arising out of the vine of David's ancestors, and in commemoration of this olden teaching, a large emblem of the grape and its attached vine decorated the entrance to Herod's temple. The apostles all recalled these things while the Master talked to them this night in the upper chamber. But great sorrow later attended the misinterpretation of the Master's inferences regarding prayer. There would have been little difficulty about these teachings if his exact words had been remembered and subsequently truthfully recorded. But as the record was made, believers eventually regarded prayer in Jesus' name as a sort of supreme magic, thinking that they would receive from the Father anything they asked for. For centuries, honest souls have continued to wreck their faith against this stumbling block. How long will it take the world of believers to understand that prayer is not a process of getting your way, but rather a program of taking God's way, an experience of learning how to recognize and execute the Father's will? It is entirely true that, when your will has been truly aligned with His, you can ask anything conceived by that will union, and it will be granted. And such a will union is effected by and through Jesus, even as the life of the vine flows into and through the living branches. When there exists this living connection between divinity and humanity, if humanity should thoughtlessly and ignorantly pray for selfish ease and vainglorious accomplishments, there could be only one divine answer: more and increased bearing of the fruits of the Spirit on the stems of the living branches. When the branch of the vine is alive, there can be only one answer to all its petitions: increased grape bearing. In fact, the branch exists only for and can do nothing except fruit bearing, yielding grapes. So does the true believer exist only for the purpose of bearing the fruits of the Spirit, to love man as he himself has been loved by God, that we should love one another, even as Jesus has loved us. And when the Father's hand of discipline is laid upon the vine, it is done in love, in order that the branches may bear much fruit, and a wise husbandman cuts away only the dead and fruitless branches. Jesus had great difficulty in leading even his apostles to recognize that prayer is a function of Spirit-born believers in the Spirit-dominated kingdom. 3. Enmity of the world. The 11 had scarcely ceased their discussions of the discourse on the vine and the branches when the Master, indicating that he was desirous of speaking to them further and knowing that his time was short, said, "When I have left you, be not discouraged by the enmity of the world. Be not downcast even when faint-hearted believers turn against you and join hands with the enemies of the kingdom. If the world shall hate you, you should recall that it hated me even before it hated you. If you were of this world, then would the world love its own. But because you are not, the world refuses to love you. You are in this world, but your lives are not to be world-like. I have chosen you out of the world to represent the spirit of another world, even to this world from which you have been chosen. But always remember the words I have spoken to you. The servant is not greater than his master. If they dare to persecute me, they will also persecute you. If my words offend the unbelievers, so also will your words offend the ungodly. And all of this will they do to you because they believe not in me nor in him who sent me. So will you suffer many things for the sake of my gospel. But when you endure these tribulations, you should recall that I also suffered before you for the sake of this gospel of the heavenly kingdom. Many of those who will assail you are ignorant of the light of heaven, but this is not true of some who now persecute us. If we had not taught them the truth, they might do many strange things without falling under condemnation, but now, since they have known the light and presume to reject it, they have no excuse for their attitude. He who hates me hates my Father. It cannot be otherwise. The light which would save you if accepted can only condemn you if it is knowingly rejected. And what have I done to these men that they should hate me with such a terrible hatred? Nothing, save to offer them fellowship on earth and salvation in heaven. But have you not read in the Scripture the saying, 'And they hated me without a cause'? But I will not leave you alone in the world. Very soon, after I have gone, I will send you a Spirit helper. You shall have with you one who will take my place among you, one who will continue to teach you the way of truth, who will even comfort you. Let not your hearts be troubled. You believe in God. Continue to believe also in me. Even though I must leave you, I will not be far from you. I have already told you that in my Father's universe there are many tarrying places. If this were not true, I would not have repeatedly told you about them. I am going to return to these worlds of light, stations in the Father's heaven to which you shall sometime ascend. From these places I came into this world, and the hour is now at hand when I must return to my Father's work in the spheres on high. If I thus go before you into the Father's heavenly kingdom, so will I surely send for you that you may be with me in the places that were prepared for the mortal sons of God before this world was. Even though I must leave you, I will be present with you in spirit, and eventually you shall be with me in person when you have ascended to me in my universe, even as I am about to ascend to my Father in his greater universe. And what I have told you is true and everlasting, even though you may not fully comprehend it. I go to the Father, and though you cannot now follow me, you shall certainly follow me in the ages to come. When Jesus sat down, Thomas arose and said, "Master, we do not know where you are going, so of course we do not know the way. But we will follow you this very night if you will show us the way." When Jesus heard Thomas, he answered, "Thomas, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man goes to the Father except through me. All who find the Father first find me. If you know me, you know the way to the Father. And you do know me, for you have lived with me, and you now see me." But this teaching was too deep for many of the apostles, especially for Philip, who, after speaking a few words with Nathanael, arose and said, "Master, show us the Father, and everything you have said will be made plain." And when Philip had spoken, Jesus said, "Philip, have I been so long with you, and yet you do not even now know me? Again do I declare, he who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you then say, 'Show us the Father'? Do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father in me? Have I not taught you that the words which I speak are not my words, but the words of the Father? I speak for the Father and not of myself. I am in this world to do the Father's will, and that I have done. My Father abides in me and works through me. Believe me when I say that the Father is in me, and that I am in the Father. Or else believe me for the sake of the very life I have lived, for the work's sake." As the Master went aside to refresh himself with water, the 11 engaged in a spirited discussion of these teachings, and Peter was beginning to deliver himself of an extended speech when Jesus returned and beckoned them to be seated. 4. The Promised Helper. Jesus continued to teach, saying, "When I have gone to the Father, and after he has fully accepted the work I have done for you on earth, and after I have received the final sovereignty of my own domain, I shall say to my Father, 'Having left my children alone on earth, it is in accordance with my promise to send them another teacher. And when the Father shall approve, I will pour out the Spirit of truth upon all flesh. Already is my Father's Spirit in your hearts. And when this day shall come, you will also have me with you, even as you now have the Father.' This new gift is the Spirit of living truth. The unbelievers will not at first listen to the teachings of this Spirit, but the sons of light will all receive him gladly and with a whole heart. And you shall know this Spirit when he comes, even as you have known me, and you will receive this gift in your hearts, and he will abide with you. You thus perceive that I am not going to leave you without help and guidance. I will not leave you desolate. Today I can be with you only in person. In the times to come, I will be with you and all other men who desire my presence, wherever you may be, and with each of you at the same time. Do you not discern that it is better for me to go away, that I leave you in the flesh, so that I may the better and the more fully be with you in the Spirit? In just a few hours the world will see me no more, but you will continue to know me in your hearts, even until I send you this new teacher, the Spirit of truth. As I have lived with you in person, then shall I live in you. I shall be one with your personal experience in the Spirit kingdom. And when this is come to pass, you shall surely know that I am in the Father, and that, while your life is hid with the Father in me, I am also in you. I have loved the Father and have kept his word. You have loved me, and you will keep my word. As my Father has given me of his Spirit, so will I give you of my Spirit. And this Spirit of truth which I will bestow upon you shall guide and comfort you, and shall eventually lead you into all truth. I am telling you these things while I am still with you, that you may be the better prepared to endure those trials which are even now right upon us. And when this new day comes, you will be indwelt by the Son as well as by the Father. And these gifts of heaven will ever work the one with the other, even as the Father and I have wrought on earth and before your very eyes as one person, the Son of Man. And this Spirit, friend, will bring to your remembrance everything I have taught you. As the Master paused for a moment, Judas Alphaeus made bold to ask one of the few questions which either he or his brother ever addressed to Jesus in public. Said Judas, "Master, you have always lived among us as a friend. How shall we know you when you no longer manifest yourself to us save by this Spirit? If the world sees you not, how shall we be certain about you? How will you show yourself to us?" Jesus looked down upon them all, smiled, and said, "My little children, I am going away, going back to my Father. In a little while you will not see me as you do here, as flesh and blood. In a very short time I am going to send you my Spirit, just like me except for this material body. This new teacher is the Spirit of truth, who will live with each one of you in your hearts, and so will all the children of light be made one and be drawn toward one another. And in this very manner will my Father and I be able to live in the souls of each one of you, and also in the hearts of all other men who love us, and make that love real in their experiences by loving one another, even as I am now loving you." Judas Alphaeus did not fully understand what the Master said, but he grasped the promise of the new teacher, and from the expression on Andrew's face, he perceived that his question had been satisfactorily answered. 5. The Spirit of Truth. The new helper which Jesus promised to send into the hearts of believers to pour out upon all flesh is the Spirit of Truth. This divine endowment is not the letter or law of truth, neither is it to function as the form or expression of truth. The new teacher is the conviction of truth, the consciousness and assurance of true meanings on real spirit levels. And this new teacher is the spirit of living and growing truth, expanding, unfolding, and adaptative truth. Divine truth is a spirit-discerned and living reality. Truth exists only on high spiritual levels of the realization of divinity and the consciousness of communion with God. You can know the truth, and you can live the truth. You can experience the growth of truth in the soul and enjoy the liberty of its enlightenment in the mind. But you cannot imprison truth in formulas, codes, creeds, or intellectual patterns of human conduct. When you undertake the human formulation of divine truth, it speedily dies. The post-mortem salvage of imprisoned truth, even at best, can eventuate only in the realization of a peculiar form of intellectualized, glorified wisdom. Static truth is dead truth, and only dead truth can be held as a theory. Living truth is dynamic and can enjoy only an experiential existence in the human mind. Intelligence grows out of a material existence which is illuminated by the presence of the cosmic mind. Wisdom comprises the consciousness of knowledge elevated to new levels of meaning and activated by the presence of the universe endowment of the adjutant of wisdom. Truth is a spiritual reality value, experienced only by spirit-endowed beings who function upon supermaterial levels of universe consciousness, and who, after the realization of truth, permit its spirit of activation to live and reign within their souls. The true child of universe insight looks for the living spirit of truth in every wise saying. The God-knowing individual is constantly elevating wisdom to the living truth levels of divine attainment. The spiritually unprogressive soul is all the while dragging the living truth down to the dead levels of wisdom and to the domain of mere exalted knowledge. The golden rule, when divested of the superhuman insight of the spirit of truth, becomes nothing more than a rule of high ethical conduct. The golden rule, when literally interpreted, may become the instrument of great offense to one's fellows. Without a spiritual discernment of the golden rule of wisdom, you might reason that, since you are desirous that all men speak the full and frank truth of their minds to you, you should therefore fully and frankly speak the full thought of your mind to your fellow beings. Such an unspiritual interpretation of the golden rule might result in untold unhappiness and no end of sorrow. Some persons discern and interpret the golden rule as a purely intellectual affirmation of human fraternity. Others experience this expression of human relationship as an emotional gratification of the tender feelings of the human personality. Another mortal recognizes this same golden rule as the yardstick for measuring all social relations, the standard of social conduct. Still others look upon it as being the positive injunction of a great moral teacher, who embodied in this statement the highest concept of moral obligation as regards all fraternal relationships. In the lives of such moral beings, the golden rule becomes the wise center and circumference of all their philosophy. In the kingdom of the believing brotherhood of God-knowing truth-lovers, this golden rule takes on living qualities of spiritual realization on those higher levels of interpretation which cause the mortal sons of God to view this injunction of the Master as requiring them so to relate themselves to their fellows that they will receive the highest possible good as a result of the believer's contact with them. This is the essence of true religion, that you love your neighbor as yourself. But the highest realization and the truest interpretation of the golden rule consists in the consciousness of the spirit of the truth of the enduring and living reality of such a divine declaration. The true cosmic meaning of this rule of universal relationship is revealed only in its spiritual realization, in the interpretation of the law of conduct by the Spirit of the Son to the Spirit of the Father that indwells the soul of mortal man. And when such spirit-led mortals realize the true meaning of this golden rule, they are filled to overflowing with the assurance of citizenship in a friendly universe, and their ideals of spirit reality are satisfied only when they love their fellows as Jesus loved us all, and that is the reality of the realization of the love of God. This same philosophy of the living flexibility and cosmic adaptability of divine truth to the individual requirements and capacity of every son of God must be perceived before you can hope adequately to understand the Master's teaching and practice of non-resistance to evil. The Master's teaching is basically a spiritual pronouncement. Even the material implications of his philosophy cannot be helpfully considered apart from their spiritual correlations. The spirit of the Master's injunction consists in the non-resistance of all selfish reaction to the universe, coupled with the aggressive and progressive attainment of righteous levels of true spirit values, divine beauty, infinite goodness, and eternal truth, to know God and to become increasingly like Him. Love, unselfishness, must undergo a constant and living readaptative interpretation of relationships in accordance with the leading of the Spirit of Truth. Love must thereby grasp the ever-changing and enlarging concepts of the highest cosmic good of the individual who is loved. And then love goes on to strike this same attitude concerning all other individuals who could possibly be influenced by the growing and living relationship of one spirit-led mortal's love for other citizens of the universe. And this entire living adaptation of love must be effected in the light of both the environment of present evil and the eternal goal of the perfection of divine destiny. And so must we clearly recognize that neither the Golden Rule nor the teaching of non-resistance can ever be properly understood as dogmas or precepts. They can only be comprehended by living them, by realizing their meanings in the living interpretation of the Spirit of Truth, who directs the loving contact of one human being with another. And all this clearly indicates the difference between the old religion and the new. The old religion taught self-sacrifice. The new religion teaches only self-forgetfulness, enhanced self-realization in conjoined social service and universe comprehension. The old religion was motivated by fear consciousness. The new gospel of the kingdom is dominated by truth conviction, the spirit of eternal and universal truth. And no amount of piety or creedal loyalty can compensate for the absence in the life experience of kingdom believers of that spontaneous, generous, and sincere friendliness which characterizes the spirit-born sons of the living God. Neither tradition nor a ceremonial system of formal worship can atone for the lack of genuine compassion for one's fellows. 6. The necessity for leaving. After Peter, James, John, and Matthew had asked the Master numerous questions, he continued his farewell discourse by saying, "And I am telling you about all this before I leave you, in order that you may be so prepared for what is coming upon you that you will not stumble into serious error. The authorities will not be content with merely putting you out of the synagogues. I warn you, the hour draws near when they who kill you will think they are doing a service to God. And all of these things they will do to you and to those whom you lead into the kingdom of heaven, because they do not know the Father. They have refused to know the Father by refusing to receive me. And they refuse to receive me when they reject you, provided you have kept my new commandment that you love one another even as I have loved you. I am telling you in advance about these things so that, when your hour comes, as mine now has, you may be strengthened in the knowledge that all was known to me, and that my Spirit shall be with you in all your sufferings for my sake and the Gospel's. It was for this purpose that I have been talking so plainly to you from the very beginning. I have even warned you that a man's foes may be those of his own household. Although this gospel of the kingdom never fails to bring great peace to the soul of the individual believer, It will not bring peace on earth until man is willing to believe my teaching wholeheartedly and to establish the practice of doing the Father's will as the chief purpose in living the mortal life. Now that I am leaving you, seeing that the hour has come when I am about to go to the Father, I am surprised that none of you have asked me, "Why do you leave us?" Nevertheless, I know that you ask such questions in your hearts. I will speak to you plainly, as one friend to another. It is really profitable for you that I go away. If I go not away, the new teacher cannot come into your hearts. I must be divested of this mortal body and be restored to my place on high before I can send this spirit teacher to live in your souls and lead your spirits into the truth. And when my spirit comes to indwell you, he will illuminate the difference between sin and righteousness and will enable you to judge wisely in your hearts concerning them. I have yet much to say to you, but you cannot stand any more just now. Albeit, when he, the Spirit of truth, comes, he shall eventually guide you into all truth as you pass through the many abodes in my Father's universe. This Spirit will not speak of himself, but he will declare to you that which the Father has revealed to the Son, and he will even show you things to come. He will glorify me even as I have glorified my Father. This Spirit comes forth from me, and he will reveal my truth to you. Everything which the Father has in this domain is now mine. Wherefore did I say that this new teacher would take of that which is mine and reveal it to you? In just a little while I will leave you for a short time. Afterward, when you again see me, I shall already be on my way to the Father, so that even then you will not see me for long. While he paused for a moment, the apostles began to talk with each other. What is this that he tells us? In just a little while I will leave you, and when you see me again it will not be for long, for I will be on my way to the Father. What can he mean by this little while and not for long? We cannot understand what he is telling us. And since Jesus knew they asked these questions, he said, "Do you inquire among yourselves about what I meant when I said that in a little while I would not be with you, and that when you would see me again, I would be on my way to the Father? I have plainly told you that the Son of Man must die, but that he will rise again. Can you not then discern the meaning of my words? You will first be made sorrowful, but later on will you rejoice with many who will understand these things after they have come to pass. A woman is indeed sorrowful in the hour of her travail, but when she is once delivered of her child, she immediately forgets her anguish in the joy of the knowledge that a man has been born into the world. And so are you about to sorrow over my departure, but I will soon see you again, and then will your sorrow be turned into rejoicing, and there shall come to you a new revelation of the salvation of God, which no man can ever take away from you. And all the worlds will be blessed in this same revelation of life, in effecting the overthrow of death. Hitherto have you made all your requests in my Father's name. After you see me again, you may also ask in my name, and I will hear you. Down here I have taught you in proverbs and spoken to you in parables. I did so because you were only children in the Spirit. But the time is coming when I will talk to you plainly concerning the Father and his kingdom. And I shall do this because the Father himself loves you and desires to be more fully revealed to you. Mortal man cannot see the Spirit Father. Therefore have I come into the world to show the Father to your creature eyes. But when you have become perfected in spirit growth, you shall then see the Father himself." When the 11 had heard him speak, they said to each other, "Behold, he does speak plainly to us. Surely the Master did come forth from God." but why does he say he must return to the Father? And Jesus saw that they did not even yet comprehend him. These 11 men could not get away from their long-nourished ideas of the Jewish concept of the Messiah. The more fully they believed in Jesus as the Messiah, the more troublesome became these deep-rooted notions regarding the glorious material triumph of the kingdom on earth.
Paper 181, Final Admonitions and Warnings. After the conclusion of the farewell discourse to the 11, Jesus visited informally with them and recounted many experiences which concerned them as a group and as individuals. At last it was beginning to dawn upon these Galileans that their friend and teacher was going to leave them, and their hope grasped at the promise that after a little while he would again be with them. But they were prone to forget that this return visit was also for a little while. Many of the apostles and the leading disciples really thought that this promise to return for a short season, the short interval between the resurrection and the ascension, indicated that Jesus was just going away for a brief visit with his Father, after which he would return to establish the kingdom. And such an interpretation of his teaching conformed both with their preconceived beliefs and with their ardent hopes. Since their lifelong beliefs and hopes of wish fulfillment were thus agreed, it was not difficult for them to find an interpretation of the Master's words which would justify their intense longings. After the farewell discourse had been discussed and had begun to settle down in their minds, Jesus again called the apostles to order and began the impartation of his final admonitions and warnings. 1. Last words of comfort. When the 11 had taken their seats, Jesus stood and addressed them. As long as I am with you in the flesh, I can be but one individual in your midst or in the entire world. But when I have been delivered from this investment of mortal nature, I will be able to return as a spirit indweller of each of you and of all other believers in this gospel of the kingdom. In this way the Son of Man will become a spiritual incarnation in the souls of all true believers. When I have returned to live in you and work through you, I can the better lead you on through this life and guide you through the many abodes in the future life in the heaven of heavens. Life in the Father's eternal creation is not an endless rest of idleness and selfish ease, but rather a ceaseless progression in grace, truth, and glory. Each of the many, many stations in my Father's house is a stopping place, a life designed to prepare you for the next one ahead. And so will the children of light go on from glory to glory until they attain the divine estate, wherein they are spiritually perfected, even as the Father is perfect in all things. If you would follow after me when I leave you, put forth your earnest efforts to live in accordance with the spirit of my teachings, and with the ideal of my life, the doing of my Father's will. This do instead of trying to imitate my natural life in the flesh as I have perforce been required to live it on this world. The Father sent me into this world, but only a few of you have chosen fully to receive me. I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh, but all men will not choose to receive this new teacher as the guide and counselor of the soul. But as many as do receive him shall be enlightened, cleansed, and comforted. And this Spirit of truth will become in them a well of living water springing up into eternal life. And now, as I am about to leave you, I would speak words of comfort. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I make these gifts not as the world gives, by measure. I give each of you all you will receive. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be fearful. I have overcome the world, and in me you shall all triumph through faith. I have warned you that the Son of Man will be killed, but I assure you I will come back before I go to the Father, even though it be for only a little while. And after I have ascended to the Father, I will surely send the new teacher to be with you and to abide in your very hearts. And when you see all this come to pass, be not dismayed, but rather believe, inasmuch as you knew it all beforehand. I have loved you with a great affection, and I would not leave you, but it is the Father's will. My hour has come. Doubt not any of these truths, even after you are scattered abroad by persecution and are downcast by many sorrows. When you feel that you are alone in the world, I will know of your isolation, even as when you are scattered every man to his own place, leaving the Son of Man in the hands of his enemies, you will know of mine. But I am never alone. Always is the Father with me. Even at such a time I will pray for you. And all of these things have I told you, that you might have peace and have it more abundantly. In this world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have triumphed in the world, and shown you the way to eternal joy and everlasting service. Jesus gives peace to his fellow doers of the will of God, but not on the order of the joys and satisfactions of this material world. Unbelieving materialists and fatalists can hope to enjoy only two kinds of peace and soul comfort. Either they must be Stoics, with steadfast resolution determined to face the inevitable and to endure the worst, or they must be optimists, ever indulging that hope which springs eternal in the human breast, vainly longing for a peace which never really comes. A certain amount of both stoicism and optimism are serviceable in living a life on earth, but neither has aught to do with that superb peace which the Son of God bestows upon his brethren in the flesh. The peace which Michael gives his children on earth is that very peace which filled his own soul when he himself lived the mortal life in the flesh and on this very world. The peace of Jesus is the joy and satisfaction of a God-knowing individual who has achieved the triumph of learning fully how to do the will of God while living the mortal life in the flesh. The peace of Jesus' mind was founded on an absolute human faith in the actuality of the Divine Father's wise and sympathetic overcare. Jesus had trouble on earth. He has even been falsely called the man of sorrows. But in and through all of these experiences, he enjoyed the comfort of that confidence which ever empowered him to proceed with his life purpose in the full assurance that he was achieving the Father's will. Jesus was determined, persistent, and thoroughly devoted to the accomplishment of his mission. But he was not an unfeeling and calloused stoic. He ever sought for the cheerful aspects of his life experiences, but he was not a blind and self-deceived optimist. The Master knew all that was to befall him, and he was unafraid. After he had bestowed this peace upon each of his followers, he could consistently say, "Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid." The peace of Jesus is, then, the peace and assurance of a son who fully believes that his career for time and eternity is safely and wholly in the care and keeping of an all-wise, all-loving, and all-powerful Spirit Father. And this is indeed a peace which passes the understanding of mortal mind, but which can be enjoyed to the full by the believing human heart. 2. Farewell personal admonitions. The Master had finished giving his farewell instructions and imparting his final admonitions to the apostles as a group. He then addressed himself to saying goodbye individually and to giving each a word of personal advice, together with his parting blessing. The apostles were still seated about the table as when they first sat down to partake of the Last Supper, and as the Master went around the table talking to them, each man rose to his feet when Jesus addressed him. To John, Jesus said, "You, John, are the youngest of my brethren. You have been very near me, and while I love you all with the same love which a father bestows upon his sons, you were designated by Andrew as one of the three who should always be near me. Besides this, you have acted for me and must continue so to act in many matters concerning my earthly family. And I go to the Father, John, having full confidence that you will continue to watch over those who are mine in the flesh. See to it that their present confusion regarding my mission does not in any way prevent your extending to them all sympathy, counsel, and help, even as you know I would if I were to remain in the flesh. And when they all come to see the light and enter fully into the kingdom, while you all will welcome them joyously, I depend upon you, John, to welcome them for me. And now, as I enter upon the closing hours of my earthly career, remain near at hand that I may leave any message with you regarding my family. As concerns the work put in my hands by the Father, it is now finished, except for my death in the flesh, and I am ready to drink this last cup. But as for the responsibilities left to me by my earthly father Joseph, while I have attended to these during my life, I must now depend upon you to act in my stead in all these matters. And I have chosen you to do this for me, John, because you are the youngest, and will therefore very likely outlive these other apostles. Once we called you and your brother sons of thunder. You started out with us strong-minded and intolerant, but you have changed much since you wanted me to call fire down upon the heads of ignorant and thoughtless unbelievers. And you must change yet more. You should become the apostle of the new commandment which I have this night given you. Dedicate your life to teaching your brethren how to love one another, even as I have loved you. As John Zebedee stood there in the upper chamber, the tears rolling down his cheeks, he looked into the Master's face and said, "And so I will, my Master, but how can I learn to love my brethren more?" And then answered Jesus, "You will learn to love your brethren more when you first learn to love their Father in heaven more, and after you have become truly more interested in their welfare in time and in eternity. And all such human interest is fostered by understanding sympathy, unselfish service, and unstinted forgiveness. No man should despise your youth, but I exhort you always to give due consideration to the fact that age oftentimes represents experience, and that nothing in human affairs can take the place of actual experience. Strive to live peaceably with all men, especially your friends in the brotherhood of the heavenly kingdom. And John, always remember, strive not with the souls you would win for the kingdom." And then the Master, passing around his own seat, paused a moment by the side of the place of Judas Iscariot. The apostles were rather surprised that Judas had not returned before this, and they were very curious to know the significance of Jesus' sad countenance as he stood by the betrayer's vacant seat. But none of them, except possibly Andrew, entertained even the slightest thought that their treasurer had gone out to betray his Master, as Jesus had intimated to them earlier in the evening and during the supper. So much had been going on that, for the time being, they had quite forgotten about the Master's announcement that one of them would betray him. Jesus now went over to Simon Zelotes, who stood up and listened to this admonition. "You are a true son of Abraham, but what a time I have had trying to make you a son of this heavenly kingdom. I love you, and so do all of your brethren. I know that you love me, Simon, and that you also love the kingdom. But you are still set on making this kingdom come according to your liking. I know full well that you will eventually grasp the spiritual nature and meaning of my gospel, and that you will do valiant work in its proclamation. But I am distressed about what may happen to you when I depart. I would rejoice to know that you would not falter. I would be made happy if I could know that after I go to the Father, you would not cease to be my apostle, and that you would acceptably deport yourself as an ambassador of the heavenly kingdom." Jesus had hardly ceased speaking to Simon Zelotes when the fiery patriot, drying his eyes, replied, "Master, have no fears for my loyalty. I have turned my back upon everything, that I might dedicate my life to the establishment of your kingdom on earth, and I will not falter. I have survived every disappointment so far, and I will not forsake you." And then, laying his hand on Simon's shoulder, Jesus said, "It is indeed refreshing to hear you talk like that, especially at such a time as this, But, my good friend, you still do not know what you are talking about. Not for one moment would I doubt your loyalty, your devotion. I know you would not hesitate to go forth in battle and die for me, as all these others would." And they all nodded a vigorous approval. "But that will not be required of you. I have repeatedly told you that my kingdom is not of this world, and that my disciples will not fight to effect its establishment. I have told you this many times, Simon, but you refuse to face the truth. I am not concerned with your loyalty to me and to the kingdom, but what will you do when I go away, and you at last wake up to the realization that you have failed to grasp the meaning of my teaching, and that you must adjust your misconceptions to the reality of another and spiritual order of affairs in the kingdom?" Simon wanted to speak further, but Jesus raised his hand, and stopping him, went on to say, "None of my apostles are more sincere and honest at heart than you, but not one of them will be so upset and disheartened as you after my departure. In all of your discouragement, my Spirit shall abide with you, and these your brethren will not forsake you. Do not forget what I have taught you regarding the relation of citizenship on earth to sonship in the Father's spiritual kingdom. Ponder well all that I have said to you about rendering to Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and to God that which is God's. Dedicate your life, Simon, to showing how acceptably mortal man may fulfill my injunction concerning the simultaneous recognition of temporal duty to civil powers and spiritual service in the brotherhood of the kingdom. If you will be taught by the Spirit of truth, never will there be conflict between the requirements of citizenship on earth and sonship in heaven, unless the temporal rulers presume to require of you the homage and worship which belong only to God. And now, Simon, when you do finally see all of this, and after you have shaken off your depression, and have gone forth proclaiming this gospel in great power, never forget that I was with you, even through all of your season of discouragement, and that I will go on with you to the very end. You shall always be my apostle, and after you become willing to see by the eye of the Spirit, and more fully to yield your will to the will of the Father in heaven, then will you return to labor as my ambassador, and no one shall take away from you the authority which I have conferred upon you, because of your slowness of comprehending the truths I have taught you. And so, Simon, once more I warn you, that they who fight with the sword perish with the sword, while they who labor in the Spirit achieve life everlasting in the kingdom to come, with joy and peace in the kingdom which now is. And when the work given into your hands is finished on earth, you, Simon, shall sit down with me in my kingdom over there. You shall really see the kingdom you have longed for, but not in this life. Continue to believe in me and in that which I have revealed to you, and you shall receive the gift of eternal life." When Jesus had finished speaking to Simon Zelotes, he stepped over to Matthew Levi and said, "No longer will it devolve upon you to provide for the treasury of the apostolic group. Soon, very soon, you will all be scattered. You will not be permitted to enjoy the comforting and sustaining association of even one of your brethren. As you go onward preaching this gospel of the kingdom, you will have to find for yourselves new associates. I have sent you forth 2 and 2 during the times of your training, but now that I am leaving you, after you have recovered from the shock, you will go out alone and to the ends of the earth, proclaiming this good news, that faith-quickened mortals are the sons of God." Then spoke Matthew, "But Master, who will send us, and how shall we know where to go? Will Andrew show us the way?" And Jesus answered, "No, Levi, Andrew will no longer direct you in the proclamation of the gospel. He will indeed continue as your friend and counselor until that day whereon the new teacher comes, and then shall the Spirit of truth lead each of you abroad to labor for the extension of the kingdom. Many changes have come over you since that day at the custom house when you first set out to follow me. But many more must come before you will be able to see the vision of a brotherhood in which Gentile sits alongside Jew in fraternal association. But go on with your urge to win your Jewish brethren until you are fully satisfied, and then turn with power to the Gentiles. One thing you may be certain of, Levi, you have won the confidence and affection of your brethren. They all love you. And all 10 of them signified their acquiescence in the Master's words. Levi, I know much about your anxieties, sacrifices, and labors to keep the treasury replenished, which your brethren do not know. And I am rejoiced that, though he who carried the bag is absent, the publican ambassador is here at my farewell gathering with the messengers of the kingdom. I pray that you may discern the meaning of my teaching with the eyes of the Spirit. And when the new teacher comes into your heart, follow on as he will lead you, and let your brethren see, even all the world, what the Father can do for a hated tax-gatherer who dared to follow the Son of Man and to believe the gospel of the kingdom. Even from the first, Levi, I loved you as I did these other Galileans, knowing then so well that neither the Father nor the Son has respect of persons. See to it that you make no such distinctions among those who become believers in the gospel through your ministry. And so, Matthew, dedicate your whole future life service to showing all men that God is no respecter of persons, that in the sight of God and in the fellowship of the kingdom all men are equal, all believers are the sons of God. Jesus then stepped over to James Zebedee, who stood in silence as the Master addressed him, saying, James, when you and your younger brother once came to me, seeking preferment in the honors of the kingdom, and I told you such honors were for the Father to bestow, I asked if you were able to drink my cup, and both of you answered that you were. Even if you were not then able, and if you are not now able, you will soon be prepared for such a service by the experience you are about to pass through. By such behavior you angered your brethren at that time. If they have not already fully forgiven you, they will when they see you drink my cup. Whether your ministry be long or short, possess your soul in patience. When the new teacher comes, let him teach you the poise of compassion, and that sympathetic tolerance which is born of sublime confidence in me and of perfect submission to the Father's will. Dedicate your life to the demonstration of that combined human affection and divine dignity of the God-knowing and Son-believing disciple. And all who thus live will reveal the gospel even in the manner of their death. You and your brother John will go different ways, and one of you may sit down with me in the eternal kingdom long before the other. It would help you much if you would learn that true wisdom embraces discretion as well as courage. You should learn sagacity to go along with your aggressiveness. There will come those supreme moments wherein my disciples will not hesitate to lay down their lives for this gospel. But in all ordinary circumstances it would be far better to placate the wrath of unbelievers, that you might live and continue to preach the glad tidings. As far as lies in your power, live long on the earth, that your life of many years may be fruitful in souls won for the heavenly kingdom. When the Master had finished speaking to James Zebedee, he stepped around to the end of the table where Andrew sat and, looking his faithful helper in the eyes, said, Andrew, you have faithfully represented me as acting head of the ambassadors of the heavenly kingdom. Although you have sometimes doubted, and at other times manifested dangerous timidity, still you have always been sincerely just and eminently fair in dealing with your associates. Ever since the ordination of you and your brethren as messengers of the kingdom, you have been self-governing in all group administrative affairs, except that I designated you as the acting head of these chosen ones. In no other temporal matter have I acted to direct or to influence your decisions, and this I did in order to provide for leadership in the direction of all your subsequent group deliberations. In my universe and in my Father's universe of universes, our brethren sons are dealt with as individuals in all their spiritual relations, but in all group relationships we unfailingly provide for definite leadership. Our kingdom is a realm of order, and where 2 or more will creatures act in cooperation, there is always provided the authority of leadership. And now, Andrew, since you are the chief of your brethren by authority of my appointment, and since you have thus served as my personal representative, and as I am about to leave you and go to my Father, I release you from all responsibility as regards these temporal and administrative affairs. From now on you may exercise no jurisdiction over your brethren except that which you have earned in your capacity as spiritual leader, and which your brethren therefore freely recognize. From this hour you may exercise no authority over your brethren unless they restore such jurisdiction to you by their definite legislative action, after I shall have gone to the Father. But this release from responsibility as the administrative head of this group does not in any manner lessen your moral responsibility to do everything in your power to hold your brethren together with a firm and loving hand during the trying time just ahead, those days which must intervene between my departure in the flesh and the sending of the new teacher who will live in your hearts, and who ultimately will lead you into all truth. As I prepare to leave you, I would liberate you from all administrative responsibility, which had its inception and authority in my presence as one among you. Henceforth I shall exercise only spiritual authority over you and among you. If your brethren desire to retain you as their counselor, I direct that you should, in all matters temporal and spiritual, do your utmost to promote peace and harmony among the various groups of sincere gospel believers. Dedicate the remainder of your life to promoting the practical aspects of brotherly love among your brethren. Be kind to my brothers in the flesh when they come fully to believe this gospel. Manifest loving and impartial devotion to the Greeks in the west and to Abner in the east. Although these, my apostles, are soon going to be scattered to the four corners of the earth, there to proclaim the good news of the salvation of sonship with God, you are to hold them together during the trying time just ahead, that season of intense testing, during which you must learn to believe this gospel without my personal presence, while you patiently await the arrival of the new teacher, the Spirit of truth. And so, Andrew, though it may not fall to you to do the great works as seen by men, be content to be the teacher and counselor of those who do such things. Go on with your work on earth to the end, and then shall you continue this ministry in the eternal kingdom. For have I not many times told you that I have other sheep not of this flock? Jesus then went over to the Alphaeus twins, and standing between them said, My little children, you are one of the three groups of brothers who chose to follow after me. All 6 of you have done well to work in peace with your own flesh and blood, but none have done better than you. Hard times are just ahead of us. You may not understand all that will befall you and your brethren, but never doubt that you were once called to the work of the kingdom. For some time there will be no multitudes to manage, but do not become discouraged. When your life work is finished, I will receive you on high, where in glory you shall tell of your salvation to seraphic hosts and to multitudes of the high sons of God. Dedicate your lives to the enhancement of commonplace toil. Show all men on earth and the angels of heaven how cheerfully and courageously mortal man can, after having been called to work for a season in the special service of God, return to the labors of former days. If for the time being your work in the outward affairs of the kingdom should be completed, you should go back to your former labors with a new enlightenment of the experience of sonship with God, and with the exalted realization that, to him who is God-knowing, there is no such thing as common labor or secular toil. To you who have worked with me, all things have become sacred, and all earthly labor has become a service, even to God the Father. And when you hear the news of the doings of your former apostolic associates, rejoice with them, and continue your daily work as those who wait upon God and serve while they wait. You have been my apostles, and you always shall be, and I will remember you in the kingdom to come. And then Jesus went over to Philip, who, standing up, heard this message from his master. Philip, You have asked me many foolish questions, but I have done my utmost to answer every one, and now would I answer the last of such questionings which have arisen in your most honest but unspiritual mind. All the time I have been coming around toward you, have you been saying to yourself, "What shall I ever do if the Master goes away and leaves us alone in the world?" Oh, you of little faith! And yet you have almost as much as many of your brethren. You have been a good steward, Philip. You failed us only a few times, and one of those failures we utilized to manifest the Father's glory. Your office of stewardship is about over. You must soon more fully do the work you were called to do, the preaching of this gospel of the kingdom. Philip, you have always wanted to be shown, and very soon shall you see great things. Far better that you should have seen all this by faith. But since you are sincere even in your material sightedness, you will live to see my words fulfilled, and then when you are blessed with spiritual vision, go forth to your work, dedicating your life to the cause of leading mankind to search for God and to seek eternal realities with the eye of spiritual faith, and not with the eyes of the material mind. Remember, Philip, you have a great mission on earth, for the world is filled with those who look at life just as you have tended to. You have a great work to do, and when it is finished in faith, you shall come to me in my kingdom, and I will take great pleasure in showing you that which eye has not seen, ear heard, nor the mortal mind conceived. In the meantime, become as a little child in the kingdom of the Spirit, and permit me, as the Spirit of the new teacher, to lead you forward in the spiritual kingdom. And in this way will I be able to do much for you which I was not able to accomplish when I sojourned with you as a mortal of the realm. And always remember, Philip, he who has seen me has seen the Father. Then went the Master over to Nathanael. As Nathanael stood up, Jesus bade him be seated, and, sitting down by his side, said, "Nathanael, you have learned to live above prejudice, and to practice increased tolerance since you became my apostle. But there is much more for you to learn. You have been a blessing to your fellows, in that they have always been admonished by your consistent sincerity. When I have gone, it may be that your frankness will interfere with your getting along well with your brethren, both old and new. You should learn that the expression of even a good thought must be modulated in accordance with the intellectual status and spiritual development of the hearer. Sincerity is most serviceable in the work of the kingdom when it is wedded to discretion. If you would learn to work with your brethren, you might accomplish more permanent things. But if you find yourself going off in quest of those who think as you do, in that event, dedicate your life to proving that the God-knowing disciple can become a kingdom builder, even when alone in the world and wholly isolated from his fellow believers. I know you will be faithful to the end, and I will someday welcome you to the enlarged service of my kingdom on high." Then Nathanael spoke, asking Jesus this question, "I have listened to your teaching ever since you first called me to the service of this kingdom, but I honestly cannot understand the full meaning of all you tell us. I do not know what to expect next, and I think most of my brethren are likewise perplexed, but they hesitate to confess their confusion. Can you help me?" Jesus, putting his hand on Nathanael's shoulder, said, "My friend, it is not strange that you should encounter perplexity in your attempt to grasp the meaning of my spiritual teachings, since you are so handicapped by your preconceptions of Jewish tradition, and so confused by your persistent tendency to interpret my gospel in accordance with the teachings of the scribes and Pharisees. I have taught you much by word of mouth, and I have lived my life among you. I have done all that can be done to enlighten your minds and liberate your souls, and what you have not been able to get from my teachings and my life, you must now prepare to acquire at the hand of that master of all teachers, actual experience. And in all of this new experience which now awaits you, I will go before you, and the Spirit of truth shall be with you. Fear not. That which you now fail to comprehend, the new teacher, when he has come, will reveal to you throughout the remainder of your life on earth and on through your training in the eternal ages." And then the Master, turning to all of them, said, "Be not dismayed that you fail to grasp the full meaning of the gospel. You are but finite, mortal men, and that which I have taught you is infinite, divine, and eternal. Be patient and of good courage, since you have the eternal ages before you in which to continue your progressive attainment of the experience of becoming perfect, even as your Father in paradise is perfect." And then Jesus went over to Thomas, who, standing up, heard him say, "Thomas, you have often lacked faith. However, when you have had your seasons with doubt, you have never lacked courage. I know well that the false prophets and spurious teachers will not deceive you. After I have gone, your brethren will the more appreciate your critical way of viewing new teachings. And when you all are scattered to the ends of the earth in the times to come, remember that you are still my ambassador. Dedicate your life to the great work of showing how the critical material mind of man can triumph over the inertia of intellectual doubting when faced by the demonstration of the manifestation of living truth as it operates in the experience of spirit-born men and women who yield the fruits of the Spirit in their lives and who love one another even as I have loved you. Thomas, I am glad you joined us, and I know after a short period of perplexity you will go on in the service of the kingdom. Your doubts have perplexed your brethren, but they have never troubled me. I have confidence in you, and I will go before you even to the uttermost parts of the earth." Then the Master went over to Simon Peter, who stood up as Jesus addressed him. "Peter, I know you love me, and that you will dedicate your life to the public proclamation of this gospel of the kingdom to Jew and Gentile. But I am distressed that your years of such close association with me have not done more to help you think before you speak. What experience must you pass through before you will learn to set a guard upon your lips? How much trouble have you made for us by your thoughtless speaking, by your presumptuous self-confidence, and you are destined to make much more trouble for yourself if you do not master this frailty. You know that your brethren love you in spite of this weakness, and you should also understand that this shortcoming in no way impairs my affection for you, but it lessens your usefulness and never ceases to make trouble for you. But you will undoubtedly receive great help from the experience you will pass through this very night. And what I now say to you, Simon Peter, I likewise say to all your brethren here assembled. This night you will all be in great danger of stumbling over me. You know it is written, the shepherd will be smitten, and the sheep will be scattered abroad. When I am absent, there is great danger that some of you will succumb to doubts and stumble because of what befalls me. But I promise you now that I will come back to you for a little while, and that I will then go before you into Galilee." Then said Peter, placing his hand on Jesus' shoulder, "No matter if all my brethren should succumb to doubts because of you, I promise that I will not stumble over anything you may do. I will go with you, and if need be, die for you." As Peter stood there before his Master, all a-tremble with intense emotion and overflowing with genuine love for him, Jesus looked straight into his moistened eyes as he said, "Peter, verily, verily, I say to you, this night the cock will not crow until you have denied me 3 or 4 times. And thus what you have failed to learn from peaceful association with me, you will learn through much trouble and many sorrows. And after you have really learned this needful lesson, you should strengthen your brethren and go on living a life dedicated to preaching this gospel, though you may fall into prison and perhaps follow me in paying the supreme price of loving service in the building of the Father's kingdom. But remember my promise. When I am raised up, I will tarry with you for a season before I go to the Father. And even this night will I make supplication to the Father, that he strengthen each of you for that which you must now so soon pass through. I love you all with the love wherewith the Father loves me, and therefore should you henceforth love one another, even as I have loved you." And then, when they had sung a hymn, they departed for the camp on the Mount of Olives.